Hi guys. Wow, getting hellos. I have the privilege of taking care of some of the most elite warfighters that our world has to offer. And for the next 30 minutes, I get to take care of you. So if I ask you a question, you're going to answer. If the person next to you is not answering, you're going to give them a throat punch or a little nudge. But this is your time. This is about you. I'm going to tell you a story. So I used to have a practice in New York City. Don't hate me. And again, I was seeing some of the most elite operators the world had to offer. And one guy in particular, his name was Brian. Brian had served as a Navy SEAL for 20 years. He was a breacher. Do you guys know what a breacher is? Muscle of teams, goes out, blows things up. The guy was built like a tree trunk. 260 pounds. I'm sure I could have run into him and he wouldn't even have noticed. Came into my office, flannel shirt, baseball cap, Salomon's, what we consider a typical team guy uniform. A couple months earlier, about 6 months earlier, Brian was home from one of his deployments. And Brian was riding his motorcycle 5 miles an hour. He was struck and taken out by a 17-year-old girl texting and driving. Brian lost his leg. Sitting in my office, I was like, Brian, how are you feeling? And he looked at me like, oh, doc, I'm having some phantom limb pain, but a little tired, but pretty good. So I leaned in. I was like, Brian, how are you doing? And he looked at me like I just asked him about Winnie the Pooh. And I went into his story, and I said, well, Brian, here you are, this Navy SEAL, this strong guy, this alpha leader. You will never work as a SEAL again. By some 17-year-old girl texting and driving, you have worked your entire life to protect our nation. And he looked at me in total bewilderment. And he said to me, Dad, that was 6 months ago. How many of you are carrying things from 6 years ago? I said I was going to ask you a question and you guys were going to answer. That's not how this deal goes. How many of you are carrying mental suffering and pain from 2 years ago? How often is that impacting your ability to execute your health and wellness dreams? 3 people? I got you. One in the front. You might not be an elite operator. I'm not. But what can we learn by those individuals that go through the fire and come out? Those that are the most successful in their health and wellness journey, they have a neutral mind. They have a neutral mind. There was absolutely no narrative about what happened to him, how he was feeling about it. I, as his provider, I was the one with the narrative. So if you have a narrative, I can provide to you the best program and the best plan that the world has to offer. But if you cannot contain the strongest muscle that you have, nothing I say here today matters. Manage your mind. So everybody here can learn to have a neutral mind. And yes, it will take practice. A couple other things like adaptability, standards, and execution. We're not going to have time to talk about those things. But if you leave here with nothing else, leave here with the concept of having a neutral mind. Because this is your life, and there is absolutely no time to lose. So that is the mental piece. The other piece is the physical piece. So now you know you have no mental constraints. What do we have to talk about? Every single one of here is predictable. Would you agree that you have predictable behaviors? Smart. Are you shocked when you stay up late and are stressed and say, I'm never going to eat that cookie again, and find yourself in the cookie jar? And every day you say, I'm not going to do that again. That's predictable. Do not be aware of your strengths. They don't count here. What you all need to know is where are your weaknesses, and you plan for those weaknesses. Plan for your weaknesses. The same weaknesses that you have today are going to be the same weaknesses that you have in 6 months. You are going to have a neutral mind, and you are going to understand that you are predictable. And you are going to implement the following strategies to sustain and maintain your health and well-being. Right now, how many of you think that we have an obesity epidemic? Yes. No, we don't. No, we do not. What we do have is we have physical inactivity. We have unhealthy skeletal muscle. And then we have obesity. At the core of what we are looking at is not an obesity epidemic. It is a midlife muscle crisis. And that's what we're looking to fix. So I'm going to give you some strategies that are going to help protect your skeletal muscle. So obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's disease, all diseases of chronic inflammation, all diseases of impaired skeletal muscle. The question becomes, are we asking the right question? Is obesity the right problem we are solving for? It's not. Is it that we are over fat? No. It is that we are under muscle. Everyone except this gentleman in the front. He was a plant. Why do we care about skeletal muscle? Skeletal muscle, sure, helps you look good in a bikini, helps you look good naked, talking about sex earlier, all of these things. But muscle is so much more than that. Muscle is your organ of longevity. Muscle is your metabolic sink. It is the only currency that cannot be bought, cannot be sold, cannot be traded for. You earn it. When you contract skeletal muscle, it secretes myokines. There are peptides that travel throughout the body and interface with every organ system. You go to the doctor and you get your thyroid checked, right? You go to the doctor and you get your hormones checked, right? How many of you go to the doctor and get your muscle checked? It's because we are still focusing on obesity. It is your site for glucose metabolism, the carbohydrates that you eat, lipid oxidation. Muscle is your body armor. And that is the most important aspect to your health, of course, in my opinion. So, how many of you here have heard about insulin resistance? Great. Well, they probably say lose weight because that's where insulin resistance comes from, right? What if insulin resistance starts in part in skeletal muscle decades earlier? You've gone to your doctor and you see elevated levels of triglycerides, elevated levels of glucose and insulin. But what if the origin of these things is in a place that you can do something about? Skeletal muscle makes up 40% of your body weight, aside from this gentleman who's probably 50. But the rest of us, skeletal muscle is your primary site for protecting yourself against insulin resistance, elevated triglycerides, all the other things. Sean had some great slides on fat, and I will tell you, he's absolutely right. You do not want fat in your muscle. Keep it in your steak, not in your skeletal muscle. It should look like a fillet. This is a really important concept. It is innovative, and it is going to be the next frontier. It's going to change the way we think about skeletal muscle. We do not directly measure skeletal muscle. For most of us who are not getting a CT or MRI, we are not measuring skeletal muscle. We are getting better at it. And what we are finding is that the loss of skeletal muscle is more important than the gain of body fat. The loss of skeletal muscle as you age is more critical to protect than worrying about gaining body fat. Changes with age, this is a sad, sad fact, but people think we age linearly. There's a decrease in testosterone, there's a decrease in hormones. Skeletal muscle is your nutrient-sensing organ. It senses the quality of your diet. That capacity goes down as we age. But we can prevent that. So if you are training and eating the way that you did in high school, how many of you are doing that? Nobody. This is great news. Nobody is on the Twinkie diet. If you do the things that you did when you were younger, you will not maintain skeletal muscle. And actually, it is not linear. There are things called catabolic crises that happen. If you get sick, who's got the flu? Oh, 3 people? I'm done. If you get the flu and you're out for 7 days, and you are older, and your diet is lower in protein, and you are not training, and you do not have some healthy skeletal muscle, the decline becomes more and more rapid. You do not go back up to baseline. We have all seen this. We have seen this with the people we love. As you age, that window and that wave of youth closes. So you must deploy strategies that protect your skeletal muscle. Okay. Health over time. Let's think about where we are. This is how we often think about aging. Predictable. Increased stress, midlife weight gain, increased cortisol, exhaustion, insomnia, increased vice use. Have you experienced this? But if you change your narrative and you change your execution and you change your awareness of your weaknesses, what I'm about to tell you is going to change your life. Why is it so confusing? How many of you have tried the vegan diet, tried the keto diet, tried, 2,700 different diets, different things? Have you tried it? Because everything else is the new next thing. Is that true? Why is it so confusing? Who is feeding us this information? We live in an environment that is chaotic, and it is a chaos maker. Who here knows what a commodity is? Great. I love Nebraska. Commodities include beef and eggs and milk and pork, whole foods. Collectively, how much money do you think that they have for marketing? No one's going to get this right, I'm going to tell you. $750 million. Collectively, the whole group. We've heard beef is what's for dinner. We've heard pork, we've heard milk.
Tastes very good.
They're one-liners. We don't hear beef has bioavailable protein. It's better for you than the Impossible Burger. It is full of these amino acids that you need. We don't hear that pork is a lean source of low-fat protein. You don't hear all the other things that go along with it. Don't you think that's strange? We don't hear that milk is better for you than almond juice. But you hear almond juice is better. I say almond juice because it's so ridiculous. Oat milk. I never knew that oats had nipples, but still. Why can we hear these things? It is because they are governed under 2 different bodies. Commodities are restricted on what they can say. They can't even come out and protect themselves and say, no, actually we're better than the Impossible Burger. But Impossible Burger can say, meat is bad for the environment, meat is going to give you heart disease, kill your neighbor, kill you and everybody else you know. Pepsi Cola has almost a $2 billion budget for marketing. That is almost more than $1 billion more than all of commodities combined. And they can make all kinds of health claims. And that is what we're hearing. The bodies that govern what the information is skewed. So we have the mouse with a microphone. Game Changers. You all seen that? Well, if you haven't, don't worry, skip it. So this is what you have to understand. It is so confusing because there is misinformation out there. How many of you have heard that cattle and beef are responsible for the majority of greenhouse gas? New York Times just came out with an article saying vegans and vegetarians are doing better for the environment. Well, actually, I pulled this data from the EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, just to show you what it actually is. You and you and you will never be able to eat your way out of climate change. It is a smokescreen for the things that matter. Are you blown away? Because that's not what you're hearing, is it? This is just what the data shows. Transportation, electricity, and industry make up over 80% of greenhouse gas. Agricultural combined is 9%. Of that 9%, beef and dairy is about 3.6%. Crop production, 4.8%, but you don't hear that. Just wanted to highlight that for you, because what you're hearing is not balanced. So, now that you know why it's so confusing, I'm going to give you actionable items. I'm going to give you actionable items that you're going to deploy. And in the next 13 minutes, you're going to remember this. That is my challenge to you. There are 2 ways to stimulate skeletal muscle: exercise and diet. The data shows that 24% of adults are meeting their requirements for exercise. 24%. How many people eat? 100. So we're going to nail that 100% right now. Current guidelines for protein is 0.8 grams per kilogram. That is the bare minimum that you need to prevent deficiencies. If you guys are eating that, you're doing the wrong thing. It is not enough for anyone in this room. For optimal health, for optimal metabolic health, the amount of protein that the current RDA is recommending is not enough. I personally recommend 1 gram per pound ideal body weight. 1 gram per pound ideal body weight. Okay? So we don't have to read all this. But anyway, it's wrong. How do we determine how we dose protein? I'm going to give you a few strategies, but the most important strategy that you are going to deploy is you're going to increase your high-quality protein. The first thing that we need to think about is how many grams of protein per day do you need? I have just solved that for you. You're welcome. The next question is how many grams per meal? And there's a lot of different ways to do this. I'm going to give you 2 overarching themes. If you have weight to lose, if you struggle with emotional eating, balancing your blood sugar, if you are afraid of being hungry, then you can eat 3 times a day. And you can have a minimum of 30 grams of protein 3 times a day. Is this ideal? This is a great starting place. Okay? If you are happy with your blood markers, you are happy with how you are looking, you are happy with how you are doing, then you can eat 2 large meals. First meal has to have around 50 grams of dietary protein, and the last meal around 50 grams of dietary protein, and depending on what your need is, you can have a smaller meal in the middle. How many grams of protein do you need a day? There you go. Not lean muscle mass, not all this other stuff, or not making it too confusing. You can go higher or lower. Start there. Your first meal of the day, no matter what, is going to be your most important. What are the metabolic advantages of protein? Improves body composition, protects skeletal muscle, increases metabolic rate, balances satiety, can lower triglycerides, all these other things. Increase HDL, decrease fasting blood glucose. You know, why do we eat protein? We don't just eat protein for muscle, but if we nail our muscle, then we can have all the other benefits. We actually eat for these amino acids. There are 20 different amino acids. I promise you there will be no quiz on this, but we really do eat for the branched chain amino acids, among other things. But again, if I can teach you to nail protein to skeletal muscle, you'll get all the other benefits of all the other amino acids because you're meeting the needs of muscle first, because you're getting high quality protein. And I'll just give you a side note. For example, if people have high blood pressure, there's an amino acid called arginine, which helps with nitric oxide production to lower blood pressure. So if you are protein deficient, do you think your body is going to use that to help lower your blood pressure? No. It's going to use the protein that you're giving it to help turn over your tissue. And then maybe it'll get to blood pressure, and maybe it'll get to these other things. So again, what we need are these branched-chain amino acids. And it's very specific and clear as to why I told you how you are going to dose your protein. Everyone should take a picture of, oh, not this. Here you go, of this. I have created a list for everybody here of high protein foods. So I'll give you a second. You guys can all get that. And then we're going to move on. Okay. So basically, we are eating between 30 and 50 grams of protein at that first meal. And actually, all the data, we talk about 3 times a day, we talk about the first and last meal. But for people that are really interested into the science, the first meal of the day is actually where all the evidence is. Once you hit this 30 gram of protein dose, you do stimulate muscle. You stimulate muscle because muscle is a nutrient-sensing organ. It senses the quality of your diet. 30 grams of high-quality protein would be 5 ounces of Piedmontese steak. We eat that all the time for breakfast. I don't cook it, but we eat it. You don't want my cooking, it's the worst. But 30 grams of high-quality protein reaches a meal threshold. If you start out your day with a lower protein amount, it is not ideal the older you get. So if you are having, I'm talking to you, and you, and you, and you, if you're having 1 egg, I'm not thrilled. Get that first meal right. 4 eggs is close. Get that first meal right. And you trigger muscle protein synthesis. So, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but you trigger skeletal muscle. That action will last for 2 to 3 hours. For the trainers in the room and the people, if there's physicians in the room, actually these growth-promoting factors go on 5 hours or longer. So you don't need a whole bunch of small protein meals. The evidence doesn't support that, but we'll make it easy. How do we dose a meal pattern? 3 meals, 30 grams of protein. I've already told you how to do it. You can see on one side, let's see, on your right side, if you are having a sub-threshold protein meal, you're not going to stimulate muscle the way you need to. This is an easy correction. An easy correction. How you can support your muscle mass. How can you be harder to kill? You're not going to be hard to kill if you can't get up out of the chair, if you can't help your kid get out of a car from an accident. This is all your responsibility. And all you have to do is optimize for skeletal muscle. So I'm telling you all these things, but if you're not ready to hear it here, it doesn't matter. Everybody can optimize your breakfast. Every single person. Okay? Another strategy, that first and last meal of the day, everybody can do that. There's a whole range of proteins. Let's skip over that. Carbohydrates. Let's talk about it. By the way, I eat carbs. I'm so glad that they changed the name of this from the Keto Summit because I said, Jamie, I cannot come back because I like my carbs. So we all know what they are. Let's talk about if you eat carbohydrates, how are you going to do it? How are you going to do it to have some kind of metabolic correction? The RDA recommends 130 grams per day. It's probably a little high, but if you have healthy skeletal muscle, how are you going to manage it? Really, we need to think about how much carbohydrates you can have over a period of 2 hours. And the data would support around 50 grams, between 40 or 50 grams is what you can dispose of. So if you eat carbohydrates, you will not go over, I would say 40 grams of carbohydrates per meal, and you certainly will not go over 130 grams unless you are training. I'm solving some major nutritional problems for you guys right now. Are you with me? And the reason that 40 to 50 gram number comes from is actually just based on physiology. Of a sedentary person, this is not about exercise. So how do you design your diet? I've told you how to think about protein. I've told you how to think about carbs. So carbs are 130 grams a day. The rest are earned with exercise, a meal threshold, no more than 40 grams of carbohydrates. So now that you're all aware of your weaknesses, and you know that if you go and you like to have pasta or you like to have whatever, you're going to do your body a favor. You are going to have enough self-worth to say, you know what? I'm not going to cause metabolic derangement. I know that I'm going to eat under 40 grams of carbohydrates if you're going to have it. Deal? Can we agree?
Agree.
Okay, I'm loving this. Really quick myths. Red meat causes heart disease, high cholesterol. The RDAs are designed for optimization. That's not true. Do you know that red meat consumption is down 30%? Americans are consuming too much meat. Cows are killing the planet. All not true. You can take this to your physicians.